Welcome into episode 7 of the State Line Fast Break podcast, the Taylor Jenkins Gets Fired episode. I'm your host, Kasey Boone. Alongside me, as always, the great Josh Miller.
Here we go. Today we will discuss Stephen A. Smith versus LeBron. March Madness continues. What in the hell are my Memphis Grizzlies doing? Other news around the league as playoffs are just a few short weeks away, and we will talk about this year's rookie class. Let's get right into this LeBron James, Stephen A. Smith talk.
The biggest news of the week in the NBA, of course, was LeBron James going on the Pat McAfee show, talking all things NBA, talking mainly about Stephen A. was the big headliner. A lot of news, a lot of notes to take away from this interview. What are your thoughts about this Stephen A. Smith, LeBron James beef and LeBron going on Pat McAfee this week?
There's a lot to take in from this LeBron versation, as Pat McAfee titled this event. LeBron playing the Pacers makes the hour drive to the Superdome. Pat McAfee's show, how much he's getting paid, who's paying him, is he getting paid? We don't know. But there was 100% a motive behind this sort of Stephen A. / the NBA media landscape as a whole behind this, in my opinion. This is a rare interview from LeBron James to do. He normally does things on his own platforms if he does any sort of interviews. So I thought it was cool to see him willing to do something like this on a show like a Pat McAfee show that you and I have listened to since almost its beginning, and now they're having figures like LeBron James on there. But this Stephen A. Smith battle, I mean, it started out with LeBron confronting Stephen A. in a third quarter of a Knicks-Lakers game, and it was sort of laughable at the time, and then Stephen A. could have just not said anything publicly about it, but he chose to. It's Stephen A. And goes on to say that if LeBron would have pushed him, he would have swung on him, which I don't think anyone would have been able to see that coming, actually. So, but there was a motive behind it. He went on there. He was getting softball questions from Pat, as usual, the whole time. And he sort of went on there, and he just sort of made fun of everyone in the media landscape, along with, we'll talk about it, Brian Windhorst. I mean, a guy who's been very favorable to LeBron for the past over 20 years now, calls him weird and all these other things. There's a lot to unpack from this, but sort of that's just the brief takeaway I have so far.
There's a very distinct reason why he would go on Pat McAfee specifically. Pat McAfee is not an NBA reporter by any means. He covers the NBA sparingly. When he would have Shams Charania or have select big news going on in the league, was really the only time Pat ever discusses it. So there's not a bias of Pat in the NBA where he's a part of this media landscape that LeBron made it his motive to go on ESPN's platform of all platforms to discuss his disdain for how the NBA is covered, and he made it a point to take multiple shots at people, specifically at the ESPN and specifically in the NBA media landscape. It was LeBron's not doing anything that's not very calculated and has a plan behind it. He went into this with the intention of, yeah, sure, we're going to talk a little bit about basketball. Pat McAfee's going to throw me some softball questions here. We're going to be able to talk about how my generation is so much better than every other generation and how he would put up 250 points in a game with Giannis and back in the 70s. There was LeBron is doing this to put himself in a favorable light and to use ESPN's biggest platform, which right now the hottest show they have is Pat McAfee's show, and to take shots at the guy that ESPN just paid $100 million a year to, or not a year to, but over the extension of his contract from Stephen A. like you said, taking a shot at Brian Windhorst, who is one of, I think, a more respected sports journalisms in the NBA world, a guy that has known LeBron and went to the same high school as LeBron, who has covered him his entire career. And like Windhorst even came out and said, like, LeBron doesn't owe him anything. Like, he took the high road instead of going on a hour rant like Stephen A., which, based on those two personalities and the characteristics of those two human beings, it was kind of expected that they would go in those directions based on what we know about them. But the guy that has covered you your entire career has, like you said, has been favorably for the most part, but he does cover LeBron in a fair light. It was completely unnecessary that we would have these shots taken at these NBA reporters, and we've talked about how bad ESPN is, how bad Stephen A. Smith is. But then you got LeBron, he is equally as part of the problem and the downfall of the league ratings, in my opinion. LeBron, you can talk about the GOAT debate, talk about all this stuff. LeBron James is a direct result of why the NBA has fallen off in ratings. He is the star of the league the last 10 years, where the ratings have consistently continued to drop. This is as much on him as it is the people that are covering the league. That is an issue, that you have your star player that feels the need to use a platform like this to attack the people that are covering the league, and then you go out and you have a pretty embarrassing performance for the most part until you had that very fortunate buzzer beater where you're just in the right place at the right time. This is a joke, and it's what we've talked about with the NBA media and the NBA in general the last few weeks. We don't have our star players focusing on basketball. We don't have the reporters of the league focusing on basketball. Instead, they're focusing on things that have no correlation to what takes place on the court, and I think it's an embarrassment. It's a joke, and it's a direct representation of who LeBron James is as a person, who Stephen A. Smith as a person, and what ESPN has become as a platform.
Yeah, we've criticized ESPN for an entire episode in a previous episode we've done. But so LeBron claims that the only reason he's talked about this is because Stephen A. he took a shot at his family, and he wanted to protect his family, his house, and he also wants to protect the players as a whole because he represents the players, which he does. But LeBron's a billionaire. He is in the NBA. He's the face of the NBA. He's been that for so long, which means he should be able to accept criticism. He's been getting criticized for many years by the likes of Skip Bayless, is the main guy who's been doing it for 15, 20 years at this point. But he felt Stephen A. went over the line. But this should have been handled behind the scenes. He should have, called. There's no way he couldn't have called Stephen A. Stephen A. is friends with Rich Paul and Maverick Carter. But both of these guys love being the center of attention. And, especially Stephen A. as of late here. The day that LeBron confronted Stephen A. was the day that the news broke about his new $100 million contract. Were those two things just a coincidence with each other? I'm not sure. But Brian Windhorst really, in my opinion, taking the brunt of this, catching the most strays. He's been, if you keep up with NBA media, he has been, one of the better guys as far as getting news, being fair to all sorts of sides of it. And he's been on LeBron's side mainly because he's been with LeBron, as we've pointed out. But LeBron went on here with the motive. He got what he wanted out of it. And then Stephen A., the same night this came out, went out and tried to tear it apart, and then went on First Take the next day and did the exact same thing, called him out for many things that I believe he should be called out for. But why aren't we focusing on basketball? It's a funny soap opera sort of situation going on, whatever, but could have been handled behind the scenes. Both of these guys wanted to make it the center of the media attention, in my opinion, and they got what they wanted.
ESPN definitely got what they wanted with this. They've become a platform that is no longer about sport. They care more about the drama and the reality TV. And that's what the NBA is becoming as well. Their main stars are worried more about the fashion before the game. They're worried about media beef. They're worried about going on these tours of promoting themselves, promoting the game today as better than previous generations, which we can have arguments about that. But I'd say there's a direct reason why, as we've talked about, the NBA ratings are massively down under today's regime of the basketball stars that we have today and the way the media is covering it. LeBron and Stephen A. are two very selfish individuals. Like you said, there's a reason it came out after he had signed that $100 million contract. And I don't agree with a lot of things Stephen A. Smith, but like he said in his hour-long rant on his YouTube channel, LeBron could have done this in a much different way. He could have came up to him and been like, hey, stay after the game. There's plenty of players in the past that when there's media members or celebrities that they want to talk to, they'll be like, hey, stick around, we'll talk in the tunnel. He could have done this in a way where there wasn't cameras on him, where we didn't have this becoming mainstream media and becoming a talking point for a week. We've talked about the NBA media, we've talked about Stephen A. Smith, we've talked about LeBron the last several episodes. There's no reason that we should be on episode 7 of this podcast talking about this for the 4th time. This is ridiculous. These two individuals are selfish, they're childish, and like I've said, LeBron is a direct reason why the NBA is seeing this down period in ratings, and it will continue to be this way as long as LeBron James keeps interacting like he does on social media. He's a baby during games. He'll claim that he's on the bottom half of the league in fouls, but there's nobody that complains to the referees more than him. There's nobody that makes it a mission to know that he doesn't get favorable calls. It's a joke. There's a reason that Michael Jordan probably doesn't want to have a relationship with him. We can get into that at a different time. But Stephen A. saying that he could beat LeBron in a fight, it's a complete joke. There's no, why would you go on your platform and say that you would have swung at a guy if he would have pushed you? That does you no good. Doesn't make you seem like a tough guy. It just makes people have another reason to make fun of you and call you soft. This is a joke, and we need to move on to something that's actually important, something that's actually relevant. Talk about basketball. And so I think this is where, instead of worrying about this drama, we should focus on a great period of basketball, which is we know as March Madness, the NCAA tournament, the Duke Blue Devils versus the Alabama Crimson Tide. Tennessee knocks off Kentucky. There's a lot to talk about with the Sweet 16. Now we're getting into the Elite 8. But first, we need to talk about how this Duke team looks unstoppable. They got 4 players in their starting lineup right now that are probably going to go top 20 in the NBA draft. It's incredibly impressive. They beat a team by 20 who shot the lights out the last game. Josh, do you have any thoughts about this Duke team and this Duke-Alabama matchup from Saturday night?
Cooper Flagg shoots 37% from the field, and they beat a number 2 seeded Alabama by 20 points and controlled the entire game, and mainly had a 10-point lead, 10, 11-point lead pretty much the whole game, and then go on a run at the very end, make it 20. Mark Sears, who's had an unbelievable career at Alabama, just played terrible yesterday, but it's not even so much as what Bama didn't do. It's just what Duke continues to do, and we should have seen this coming based on their recruiting coming into the year with obviously Cooper Flagg, Knipple, Milo Watch, and then Proctor coming back. I mean, these 4 guys are unbelievable. I think Duke wins this game last night even without Cooper Flagg, and Cooper Flagg is the best player in the country, not even close in my opinion. And I'm trying not to rush it, but man, I cannot wait to see where he lands in the league. He's going to leave an immediate impact on any team he goes to. He can guard 1 through 5 almost. He's one of the better help side defenders. His jump shot's only going to continue to get better, and he can obviously finish around the rim. I think he didn't play great last night, but I think he needs to even be more aggressive than he is at times based on his size. But he's only 18 years old. He's only going to continue to get better. This Duke team, if they finish it out, we're going to be talking about this Duke team for a long time. And then another conversation that's arising in the sports media landscape is, if Cooper Flagg can finish this off, where does he rank as among Duke players in their history. I mean, if he finishes this off, he gets the Naismith player, which he's favored to do, the favorite to win. I mean, he can be considered potentially the best Duke player ever. I mean, there's definitely an argument for it. This Duke team's unbelievable, and I had picked Florida. I'll still stick with my pick, although this Duke team looks unbeatable. They're blowing everyone out. They've only lost 3 games all year, and they did beat Auburn. So this team's unbelievable. John Shire's done a great job.
Yeah, Duke has continued to roll post Mike Krzyzewski era. John Shire continues to recruit at a high level, like what was expected out of a Duke program. What I don't think is talked about, obviously people recognize it, but we need to talk about these 4 players specifically. They're not only making impacts on the offensive end. Like, the Duke bench provided them 8 total points out of their 85. Proctor put up 17, Knipple 21, Flagg 16, Matherwatch 14. But all 4 of these guys do it on the defensive end too. Like Knipple, you look at him, you're like, this guy doesn't play defense. But there's multiple games throughout the year he's taken on the best wing assignment defensively. 3 steals last night. Proctor with 2 steals. Matherwatch and Flagg both having blocks throughout this game. Cooper Flagg is a much better defender than what people probably think. And when you look at these 2 guys, Flagg and Knipple, obviously these pasty white guys, you don't think them to be super locked down defenders. But they get after you on the defensive end. They play with a high motor. Knipple's going to be a guy that I'm going to talk about continuously over the next several months until we get to the NBA draft. He keeps rising for me. Need to find a way to get that guy in a Spurs uniform, but we'll talk about that at a later date. Matherwatch, I can't decide how I think he's going to be in the NBA, but last night showed you he's got the ability to impact the game on the offensive end. He's super efficient when he gets the ball down low. He's a walking double-double. He's going to put up 10 and 10 every single game. Like you said, Flagg probably had a mediocre game, one of the worst games you'll see him have, and Duke still wins by 20. This team is unbelievable. Alabama is one of those teams where if they're not making shots, they don't really have any other way to beat you. They're very one-dimensional, but Duke, they don't have to be making shots. Like Knipple and Flagg, 6 of 16, 6 of 15, they're not making shots, but they find a way to impact the game in so many other ways. They're so well-balanced top to bottom. I don't think there's really any holes in this Duke team. You're just going to have to get a team that gets hot on a particular night to beat them. And for me, that was Auburn. That was who I picked. For you, it's Florida. We're yet to be seen, but we'll see if we get that matchup. I think we will get one of those teams, 2 teams versus Duke in the championship, and it's going to be, in my opinion, it should be one of the highest-rated games of all time because this Duke team, like I said, 4 players probably going to go in the top 20 of the NBA draft. It's an unbelievable roster, and you're going to get a chance to see them against Auburn, who's got an older starting lineup than the Oklahoma City Thunder, and a Florida team that's been arguably the best team in basketball for most of the year, definitely the best team in the SEC. So that's such an unbelievable look ahead to what we can potentially get out of that. But another game that I know that we were deeply invested in, Tennessee knocks off Kentucky after losing the first 2 during the regular season. A lot of Kentucky fans had a lot to say going into this game, but were very quiet from the jump as Tennessee just dominated from start to finish. I have one question for you. Can Tennessee win a national title this year?
I just wish we were on the opposing side and not Duke's side for all the reasons we just listed out. I think we're about to play Houston here within a couple hours of recording this podcast, and either one of us or Houston, whoever wins this Elite Eight matchup, I think could be as much as 7 to maybe even 11-point dogs against Duke based on how they're playing. So based on that, I'm going to say no, but this Tennessee team deserves a lot of credit. I've kept up with them all season long, and I think they're the least talented team by far, which is a huge accomplishment again for Rick Barnes, getting this team to back-to-back Elite Eights, going against the Kentucky team that you don't match up very well with. You've lost both times. They shot 50% from three both times that they've played, and they only got up 15 threes in this game, and they had made 12 of 24 both times in previous matchups. But the main reason why Tennessee's in the Elite Eight is obviously their defense. Yes, we're known for our defense. But we have out-rebounded Kentucky and UCLA by 10 in both games, and we are not a very big team, and we've been out J.P. Estrella the entire season, who was going to be our starting center going into the year, and he hasn't played a single minute all season long. And rebound, we're not. I mean, like I said, not a big team. Zakai Ziegler, controlled this game from the tip, offensively, defensively. Ends up with 10 assists, all-time single-season assist leader in SEC history. Unbelievable player. Very grateful to have watched his career. But as far as winning a national championship, I don't see it. Although if we can win today and make the Final Four, I will be happy, just because we have never been past today's game in the Elite Eight. But it's going to be a heavyweight battle here in a minute when we watch Tennessee and Houston, and obviously I'm predicting a very low-scoring game. Kelvin Sampson, Rick Barnes have been long life best friends, and I've listened to both of their media this week, and they have raved at each other, saying if Rick Barnes, or if Tennessee doesn't, if we lose today, then Rick Barnes wants Houston to win it all, and vice versa. They both came out and said that, which speaks to their sort of friendship, their stature as coaches. But huge win for Tennessee, man. I was very happy to see us take down Kentucky. It would have been a very hard pill to swallow, losing to Kentucky 3 times. But from the jump, this game was controlled by us and end up winning by 13. But we had held a 10-point lead for most of this ball game, and every time Kentucky would hit a 3 here and there, they didn't hit many, but when they did make a couple plays, we come back down and we answer it. Chaz Lanier didn't have his best game, but the shooting in your Colts stadium, it's a terrible depth perception, in my opinion. If you've ever shot a basketball in an arena alone, you can just tell it's much different than just a normal gym, let alone a football stadium. There was players missing bad, and we talked about this the day after this game, but some of these players were missing shots bad. This is going to be, 45-40 is the final score with Tennessee and Houston today.
Yeah, every obviously being from Kentucky, having the past there, I got a lot of text message going into this game. Every time somebody would ask me my thoughts on this game, I said exactly what you just said. There was no way that Kentucky was going to be able to shoot the way that they had shot. It's not because they don't have the talent to do so. It's not because they were lucky in those games. It's due to the simple fact that they're in a football stadium now. There is a net that is hung down on half of this stadium. It is a completely different feel. The depth perception is thrown way off. You had some of the best shooters in the world, Chaz Lanier and Kobe Brea, not even hitting rim, not even hitting net. Jordan Gainey from the left corner shot one 4 feet over the basket, almost hitting the right corner of the basketball court. It was going to always be a game that favored Tennessee just in play style. Kentucky was able to get pretty much nothing out of Kobe Brea, 5 points. Trent Noah and Travis Perry, the 2 kids from Kentucky, who I think both scored over 10 in the last time that they had played the Volunteers, provided you 0 points. Trent Noah played 12 minutes, zeros across the board in the stat sheet except for 1 personal foul. So they limited Kentucky's bench. Obviously the shooting was going to be a big storyline, and it was never going to be 50% from 3 again. This game favored game favored Tennessee, and they got a big win over Kentucky. I know a lot of Kentucky fans, they're obviously very hopeful for the future. Year 1 under Mark Pope, making it to a Sweet 16, something that they haven't seen in 5 years under Calipari. And so I think they're heading in the right direction. They've got 3 really good freshmen coming in. They're going to have several guys from this roster back, so they're going to be a tough out. But we can't say enough about what Zakai Ziegler, what Chaz Lanier have done for Tennessee this year.
Can't leave out
And
Jordan Meshack.
Meshack, what he's done over his career. Jordan Gainey taking a step up this year. You saw kind of the flashes and potential last year from Gainey. There were several games where he made some big shots, but this year he has been ice cold, stepped up big moments. The game winner against Illinois, this game making several key shots, playing 30 minutes a game. You mentioned it, Meshack, Ziegler, seniors, 2 guys that mean a ton not only to the basketball program but to the university. They're going to be ambassadors for the university for a long time. This was as impressive as a win as we've seen Tennessee have all year. And now back to the question: can they win a national title? I don't know. I don't know. I don't have an answer for you. Like you said, there's going to be a dogfight today. It's going to be, you said 45-40 or something like that. One team might cross 50. We'll see. Might get into the 60s, but it's going to be a slug-it-out fest. You've got 2 guys that have very similar defensive philosophies. They're going to get after you. These coaches know each other extremely well. Both teams are going to be really prepared even off 2 days just because how well each coach knows each other. Can either one of these teams beat the Duke Blue Devils? I don't think so. I mean, it's going to be tough. You're going to have to make shots. You're going to have to play tough defense. Tennessee's got the team that they're going to be able to match up with these 4 guys just because they're going to have so many guys that are defensive-minded that they're going to take on the assignment and have pride in it. It's just what Rick Barnes does. But it's going to be a tough 3-game stretch if they're going to be able to win a national title, and I find it hard to believe that they're going to be able to do it just based on the matchups that they've got. They're going to have to they're going to be beat up after tonight's game, and then you're going to be expected to walk in and play one of the most talented teams in the history of college basketball next week. That's a tough ask from a team, and it just we'll let the score, let the games dictate it. But impressive win for Tennessee, and you've got to love beating your in-conference rival. The first time Tennessee's ever played another SEC team in the NCAA tournament, and they get a big win against their cross-state rival. One last thing that I think I'd like to touch on this NCAA topic before we move on is, what are your thoughts on the transfer portal being open during the NCAA tournament? We already see several coaches, Tom Izzo, Calipari, when they've been asked on McAfee's show about what are your thoughts on having to recruit while also game plan for the Sweet 16 and the Elite 8 games. Obviously, they think it's a joke. In my opinion, there needs to be a dead period until after the national championship game. And we're in the middle of the spring semester anyways. Like, how are you going to transfer and then get enrollment? Like, we need to slow our roll on this transfer portal thing. And there shouldn't be any transfers until after the national championship game. Do you have any quick thoughts on this before we move on?
I mean, it is a joke, and I haven't seen one positive comment regarding how this transfer portal window works. And it's the exact same situation in college football as we see it during championship weekend in college football. The portal or signing days going on. You got it's terrible. Tennessee's got a guy on a visit in Knoxville on Monday, and we could be in the Final Four in 1 week from now. It's terrible. I hate it. There's over 1,000 players in the portal right now, and we're seeing coaches leaving, taking new jobs, players leaving, and while preparing for the moments that they've worked for all year. Rick Barnes, in his press conference yesterday, explaining that he's having to do all the game planning while putting loads on the other coaches to worry about the roster for next year as they're preparing for the biggest game of the season that they've worked all year long to get to this point. But yet there's people on that staff that aren't even worried about this game. They're worrying about who's visiting this week through the portal. I think it's horrible. And if someone can, justify it to me that this is a good way to go about it, please let me know, because I've done some research on this, seen a lot of people's opinions on it. Some of the biggest names you mentioned, Izzo, Calipari. I mean, not a single positive thing I've heard about this situation, and it's the same thing in football. The NCAA is a joke. I have nothing good to say about them. Simple as that.
Yeah, well said. Well, there's a lot of things that need to go on with this transfer portal. It's terrible. It's terrible in basketball. It's terrible in football. It's not very good for the NCAA to have these issues and to have your main coaches and stars talking about this. And, I mean, St. John's, Rick Pitino just set his best player, the conference player of the year in the Big East, and now he's probably going to transfer because he's upset he didn't play the last 2 minutes after having a terrible performance. So, I mean, we'll see what happens with it, but I think that's enough for the NCAA. We'll transition back to the NBA, where we finally get to have the rant of all rants. Brace your ears, people, because Josh is on one this week as Taylor Jenkins has been fired as the head coach for the Memphis Grizzlies. This comes just 9 games before the playoffs. 9 games before the playoffs. We've had some situations in the past where coaches have been fired mid-year when their teams are performing, but it has never been the level of coach that Taylor Jenkins is, the position that the Grizzlies are in as a top 4 to 5 seed in the Western Conference, and this close to the playoffs. Like we had the David Blatt situation a couple years ago where the Bucks insert Doc Rivers in the middle of the year and then finish out the year with a head coach and change, which you don't see very often, but never to the level of Taylor Jenkins being fired 9 games before the playoffs with no real answer from anybody within the Grizzlies organization as to why they would make this move. But it just leads me to ask you this question. Could the Grizzlies miss the playoffs now without Taylor Jenkins? And what are your thoughts, your ultimate rant on Taylor Jenkins being fired?
This is the most embarrassing moment for me as a Grizzlies fan in a long, long time. It sums up my experience as a Memphis Grizzlies fan. It's so embarrassing. It's so mind-boggling that it's almost laughable at this point. When I got this news, I mean, I couldn't believe it. I'm thinking the season's almost over. We're sitting at 5th in the Western Conference. Have we played good since the All-Star break? No, we have not. Are we frauds? I would say 100% we are. But for Zach Kleiman to go about this situation the way he has, our general manager, I completely disagree with how he's handled it. He is claiming that it was 100% his decision and no one else had any sort of input on it. But this goes back to the offseason. Last year, we had a bad season because our entire team was injured. And Taylor Jenkins was having to make lineups on the fly all season long, tried to keep us afloat for as long as he could, but just not enough talent that was healthy and available for him all year long. Then they clean house except for Taylor Jenkins, and they bring in these coaches from the Euro League, and they were in bidding wars with other teams to get these top-rated assistants. And the main guy here, who is now our interim head coach, Tomas Isalo, who, like I said, a lot of other teams wanted this guy, has a lot of offensive upside, whatever. But Taylor Jenkins had zero impact on this decision. Zach Kleiman said, you're going to be the head coach, but I'm going to bring in all your assistants, and you're just going to have to figure it out. Along with everything Taylor Jenkins has had to deal with. Ja Morant has been, I mean, do I even have to get into it? He's had so many off-the-court issues. Then when he plays, he's always hurt. And then when he does play, he shoots terrible from the three. He's gotten no better from the three-point line. He's having his worst season by far. and he's barely played any games, and they're just going to point the finger at Taylor Jenkins and say, oh, it's your fault. No, that is not how this works. Ja Morant needs to take some accountability for his play, and rumors out there saying there's clashes within our organization, how we're running things offensively. We have one of the best offenses in basketball. I don't care. We're one of the least pick-and-roll teams in the league. Tim McMahon pointed that out on ESPN. We have one of the best offenses in the league. Our defense has been the issue. But Taylor Jenkins has had to babysit this roster more than any other coach in basketball based on the circumstances he's been put up with. Injuries galore. Ja Morant, I'm not even going to get into some of the issues. It's not even funny the amount of issues he's had compared to the great moments he's had. Taylor Jenkins is the winningest coach in Grizzlies history. And we're gonna get into some of the coaches that are on the hot seat and some of the best candidates. Taylor Jenkins immediately goes to number one as far as head coaching candidates. He's going to get picked up. He's going to go somewhere. He's going to win. He is one of the best coaches that's in basketball. I talked about this a couple weeks ago on the podcast. Now I look stupid because I just covered for him, and now my own team's going to go out and fire him 9 games before the season ends. And I think it was sort of coming all along based on the way we went about our offseason hiring these coaches when he had zero decision towards that. And it's a joke. It's embarrassing. It, like I said, sums up my fandom as a Grizzlies fan. I have lost all hope in our team, and it's so sad to say that because we have so much upside, so much potential, so much talent on our young roster. But me, personally, I'm going to place a lot of this blame to Ja Morant and Zach Kleiman based on how they handled this situation. It's Ja Morant acting like he had no idea this was happening. I find that very hard to believe. I think this was sort of in the books for how Taylor Jenkins maybe clashed back. And I'm not saying Taylor Jenkins is a perfect coach. He had his flaws. Maybe he was too friendly at times, whatever. But everyone in this league, you see these other coaches getting asked about it. J.J. Redick, Mike Malone, Mike Budenholzer, Doc Rivers, all of these guys get asked about this situation. Every one of them completely confused. They all regard Taylor Jenkins for one of the best coaches in basketball. And he's going to get picked up very quickly. I'm sure he's already on the phone with people. If he wants a job, he will have it next season. There is zero doubt about that. And it's just, I've lost all hope. This is embarrassing. I mean, what's your thought? I mean, I hope we do miss the playoffs. I hope we lose every single game. I hope we lose every single game. I want Ja Morant gone. I've been on the edge of saying that, and maybe I shouldn't have just said that, but I just said it. Trade Ja Morant. Restart this. I'm done. I'm done.
Well, like you mentioned, they're first in pace in the entire league. They're 6th in offensive rating, and they're 2nd in points per game. And I've seen several reports out there that they're giving credit to Tomas and several of these assistants for this new offensive identity, and they're throwing Taylor Jenkins under the rug for some of these defensive lapses and the fact that they had to hire these new coaches just to be adaptable in offense, and they're trying to make every excuse in the book. This makes no sense. Taylor Jenkins, like you said, one of the best coaches in basketball, will be a San Antonio Spur next year. Hopefully, we'll get into that. We'll see. I mean, we'll see how that all.
You better hope.
We'll trade you. We'll give you Mitch Johnson. We'll take Taylor Jenkins. We'll see. But yeah, it makes no sense. Like you talked about, Spoelstra, Malone, Steve Kerr. They were all asked about this. They said shocking, stunning. And even the players were asked about this. You had Gigi Jackson, you had Jaren Jackson Jr. both say, "I thought we were Centelled." Now, if you don't know, NBA Centel is a meme account on Twitter that just spews out fake news, and people fall for it because they think it's an actual reporting site. The players thought they were getting Centel. They thought they were getting fake news reported to them. They didn't even know. They found out on social media they didn't even know within their own organization that this was happening. It's an embarrassment for the Grizzlies to do this 9 games before the year. Like, there was listening to a lot of people talk and a lot of podcasts and other sports reporters. There's some thoughts about what Taylor Jenkins' future was going to be like in the offseason. This is the type of move that you make as a team 5th in the Western Conference with a coach that's highly regarded. You do this in the offseason where you have days, weeks to sit down with your entire executive branch. Zach Kleiman can sit down with the ownership. They can sit down with the people making decisions financially. He can sit down with some of these star players, sit down with Taylor Jenkins, sit down with all the assistants, and make a cumulative decision that is best for the organization. This seems like desperation. This seems like there has something else going on behind the scenes that we are not aware of yet. This screams trouble because it just doesn't make any sense. You don't fire a guy like Taylor Jenkins with 9 games left until the playoffs at the end of March. It doesn't happen. There has to be something else. I give credit to you as a Grizzlies fans for sticking through this. I think it's going to be a very interesting rest of the season. We'll see. They can either rally from this and it can either motivate them or they can completely collapse. That's yet to be seen, and the good news is they're going to get on the basketball court and we're going to find out. But I would say, like you said, tough time to be a Grizzlies fan. But that kind of leads us into a segment of what are some other hot seat coaches right now in the NBA. Obviously, we've seen Taylor Jenkins now fired. What other coaches are sitting out there that are just lame ducks waiting to be fired? And this isn't like the NFL. You see a bunch of coaches that are going to be fired mid-year because teams want to get a jump start on an assistant that may be a hot head coaching candidate or whatnot. But this doesn't happen in the NBA where teams fire coaches mid-year. So a lot of this stuff happens in the off-season. And out of the list of teams, are there a specific coach that you think might be on the hot seat here?
Yeah, I got a quick 1 through 5 list here of names that I think either are on the hot seat or should be on the hot seat. Number 1, Darko. I'm not gonna even try the last name. The Toronto Raptors have been a joke. He's been a joke. Some of the things he's gone back and forth with Tristan Thompson. I think there's a solid chance the Raptors are looking for a new head coach, along with former Raptors head coach Nick Nurse down in Philly for that debacle, which I don't believe he should be fired. This is a sort of a culmination of things that are in this list, and I don't think he should be fired, but I think there's a solid chance. Mitch Johnson, I think the Spurs are going to look for some sort of new energy. I think they should, and Taylor Jenkins obviously seems like the perfect spot there just because he started his career there, and I might shed a tear or two that day. I see Taylor Jenkins is headed to San Antonio, but I think 2 other names that we've talked about before who I think could be on the move. Unpopular opinion here, I think Tom Thibodeau could be let go depending on the playoff run the Knicks go with this year. I'm not saying he should be. I just think with the way that situation's going, I think he's been unbelievable for them. He's kept them more relevant than they've been in a very long time, but I could see them moving on. And Mike Budenholzer in year 1 in Phoenix, he seemed to have lost the locker room. I'm not so sure. They might give him another year, this Kevin Durant situation, but those are the top 5 for me on the hot seat.
Yeah, it's a good list. Thibodeau's very interesting because that's going to be a complete decision made by the front office because it seems like all the players there really enjoy him. I mean, they always, if you watch Brunson and Josh Hart's podcast, they always call in and mess with Tibbs. It seems like they've got a very good relationship with the players there, but like you said, if it's the thing where they don't perform in the playoffs again, that could be a situation where they decide to get a fresh voice. I personally think he's still a good fit there, and they should not fire him. But I've got a very similar list that you do. Nick Nurse, I think, And Philadelphia seems like one that's already kind of 2 steps out. I mean, he's not been there very long, but has had pretty much zero success since getting that head coaching job from moving on with the Raptors. Another coach, I think, I think he's a very quality head coach, but just the management there, I think, is the biggest issue. It's not necessarily on him, but Billy Donovan, Chicago Bulls, they overperform every year based on the roster. He's got Giddey, he's got Kobe White that are just performing at a increased odds. I think he's a very good head coach, and I don't think that they should move on from him. But I think the organization is so poor that it would honestly be better for Billy to get out and maybe seek a new opportunity somewhere, whether that's potentially heading back to the college game or a new NBA opportunity. Quinn Snyder with the Atlanta Hawks. Ever since they moved on from Nate McMillan, they figured that Quinn Snyder was going to be able to take them back to the conference finals, maybe get them to a finals. That just has not happened yet. I think Quinn Snyder's a very good head coach, and he wasn't necessarily a fit anymore for the Jazz based on he is a winning coach, and they were very much in tank mode. But he has now had the Hawks sitting at under 500 for the last several years. He's a guy that they might consider moving on from. Again, another head coach that I think is a very good head coach, but that's more maybe an organizational failure on their end. The poor DeJounte Murray trade, and then the poor DeJounte Murray trade again after they had to get rid of him and just salvage it for nothing. He's a guy that I think that Atlanta could look to move on from. We already talked about it, but I think Doc Rivers with Milwaukee could be a guy that they maybe move on from. It seems hard to believe considering they pulled the plug and just inserted Doc middle of the year, so it seems like the ownership and the front office there really value his voice, but he has underperformed as the head coach for the Bucks. He's a guy that I look at. You talk about Mitch Johnson, there's so much support for him in the Spurs. I don't know that they would. I mean, he can't really be fired. He's not really technically the head coach. It's Pop. I mean, if Pop can come back, he's going to come back, and Mitch will probably just return to a bench role. But Mitch will be on my list, and we'll talk about it here in a minute, of coaches that could get a head coaching job somewhere else if Pop were to come back or they were to make the decision to go get a guy like Taylor Jenkins. Willie Green for the Pelicans, I think, is another guy that probably should be fired. I don't think he's a very good head coach. Hasn't had very much success. You haven't had a great roster to work with, or Zion to be healthy pretty much your entire time there. But he's a guy that I look at that is on the hot seat. The last guy that I'll mention, Chauncey Billups with the Portland Trail Blazers. They're sitting at 32-42. They went on that big run. I think they won 8 or 9 straight at one point to kind of put them in playing contention. They've kind of teetered off here in the last several games. Now I've lost 3 straight games. Definitely got an eye towards the lottery for Portland now, but we'll see what they end up doing with Chauncey. He would be a guy that would be on my hot seat list going into the end of the year. There's a lot of coaches that probably could fit under this list, but those are a few that I just wanted to highlight. And now I want to move forward and talk about a little bit of head coaching candidates. You already mentioned Taylor Jenkins. I mentioned Mitch Johnson as potential head coaching candidates somewhere. Is there anybody else that you kind of look at as good fits? You got Sacramento Kings, who fired Mike Brown mid-year. You've now got the Grizzlies job, who's going to be open. We'll see what happens with the Spurs job, plus several other jobs will likely open up at the end of the year. Do you have head coaching candidates, and do you have potential fits with a specific organization that you would like to see?
I haven't got necessarily fits, but I've got candidates that I think NBA teams should be looking at to hire, and some of these are long shots, but I think some of these teams need to go all out on some of these guys. Obviously, never thought I'd say this, but the best head coaching candidate right now is Taylor Jenkins, the guy who we just pushed out the back door with 9 games left in the season. Many teams would love to have him as a head coach, and I think he will be picked up very quickly. A guy who I want my Memphis Grizzlies to take, which it's not going to happen, but I'll just maybe try and get my hopes up. Nate Oates from Alabama. Not going to happen, but I think his coaching style goes perfectly into NBA play with the way they shoot threes. I mean, similar to how Boston's plays, with mainly only taking threes with no mid-range jump shots whatsoever. I think he could be put into the NBA and be pretty successful based on, or depending on what his roster would look like. Another guy who I don't see going back to the league, at least right now, who was a top league assistant, Kevin Young at BYU. I think teams should be calling him to come back up, although unlikely to happen. I think another guy who needs another shot, and I think he got a unfair rap. He got placed in a very weird situation, and we're about to be talking about him a lot as he's now joining LeBron James on the Mind the Game podcast, Steve Nash. I love Steve Nash, and I think he deserves another shot, and I think him being more in the public could maybe get him another shot if he wants it. Micah Nori, assistant at the Timberwolves, had a lot of publicity last offseason to potentially be a head coach by when he had to take over the main job after the Minnesota Timberwolves head coach, Chris Finch. He tore his ACL. He couldn't move around as much, so they moved Micah Nori to the main spot there. I thought he did very well in that Denver series. And another guy, Sam Cassell, his name's been circulating around each cycle here, so he's due to get an opportunity. So those are some of the names. I mean, I know some of them are long shots, but I think all those guys would be pretty to very successful in the league.
Yeah, you mentioned a couple of guys there that I've kind of kept tabs on. Micah Nori, we talked about with Timberwolves. He's been interviewed multiple jobs. He's going to be a hot commodity candidate. Sam Cassell, who's been interviewed multiple stops, same thing. He's going to be somebody that's going to get multiple interviews again. A guy that you didn't mention that sits on a bench for one of the best head coaches in the world right now, Chris Quinn, an assistant for the Miami Heat. Tremendous assistant, he's a young, up-and-coming guy. He's been with the Heat for 11 years. He is somebody that has not had his head coaching opportunity yet, but is going to get it very, very soon. I think he's going to do a great job. We talked about Miami Heat. Eric Spoelstra will be interesting to see kind of how the Miami Heat organization moves forward. I think, obviously, we didn't include Spoelstra on the hot seat list. I think, in my opinion, he's a top 2 to 3 head coach in the entire world. If Miami Heat were to somehow pull the plug on him, he would instantly be wanted, but I don't think he's even remotely on the hot seat. Him and Pat Riley know exactly what they're doing and what they need to reload that organization there. You mentioned Nate Oates. I don't think there's a chance in hell that he leaves that Alabama situation. They are going to be a title contender every single year that he is there. He's a tremendous head coach. He has no incentive to leave the college game. There's so much money involved in the college game right now that I just don't see a lot of guys leaving once they get down there, except for, you mentioned Kevin Young. I think, once again, a guy that should be called by almost every team that's going to have a position open just to talk to him. He's a brilliant basketball mind who sat on the bench for the Suns for several years. An old name that could be recycled. What about Mike D'Antoni? Do you think he would come back? He's currently serving as an advisor for the Pelicans. He's a name that could be out there. I mean, we saw his latest stint with the Nets as an assistant for the guy that you mentioned, Steve Nash. He's a guy that, I mean, he could circle back, and he's got plenty of head coaching experience of a team that feels like maybe your Memphis Grizzlies who want a new offensive identity. Mike D'Antoni will certainly bring something that's different than what we see in the league. That's 7 seconds or less, high-paced offense, which they got the point guard to play in that type of system. They're going to need to continue to surround the team with shooters, which we've already seen the Grizzlies have several of. And then one I'll mention that's going to be specific for the Spurs. I don't think any other team would hire Becky Hammon, but she would definitely be somebody that would be in the Spurs interviews if they got to the point where they didn't just promote Mitch Johnson and Pop were to step away. She has a ton of success, 2 back-to-back titles down at the WNBA, long-time assistant on Pop's staff, spent several games when Pop was away being the head coach for the Spurs, won a Summer League title as the Spurs head coach in 2015. I think she would definitely get an interview and be a strong candidate for the Spurs head coaching job, especially if Greg Popovich had any say in who they hired, he would definitely be a strong advocate for Becky Hammon to be the first female to get a high-ranking position in the NBA, whether that be head coach or executive member. That's a Spurs-specific one. She has had jobs when Chauncey Billups got the job with Portland. She was a candidate there, actually one of the final 3 candidates interviewing for that job. You mentioned the Toronto Raptors earlier. She was in the running for that job. So she's had interviews, but just doesn't seem like something many teams would do. But I definitely think the Spurs, with her past experience there and Popovich's appreciation for her basketball mind, she would definitely be a candidate there. But do you have any final thoughts on kind of the coaching segment, or we can kind of move forward and talk about some of this rookie class a little bit?
Yeah, just wanted to point out Mike D'Antoni. I thought about putting him on my list, and I mean, he's had plenty of his success. I mean, every team he's kind of been on has been a relevant team. He's always known to have a high-powered offense. The only reason I didn't put him on my top 5 list was because his age. He is getting up there, and I believe he's up to at least 70 years old. So that was the only reason. Other than that, I mean, I think for sure if he really wanted another head coaching position, I think he could probably get it. But I'm not sure at this point he would want one. He seems to be sort of liking the being in organizations. Like you said, he's at the Nets with Steve Nash. I mean, if we could get Steve Nash and then have D'Antoni as an assistant again, I mean, I wouldn't be necessarily opposed to that. But I think the Grizzlies have already got their mind made up. We're going to keep our interim as our head coach. We're going to hire the guy who we have now. So I think that's already a done deal. But overall, it'd be interesting to see how these coaches sort of go forward. As I mentioned last episode, this is the time of the year where coaches make their most money.
Yeah. Moving on a little bit, we want to talk about this rookie class. Ricochet and Sarr kind of finally hitting their strides. They had that rookie wall earlier in the year where they were trying to figure things out. Both international prospects. That'll happen. The international game is a lot different than the NBA game. Castle continues his run as probably the runaway favorite right now for the Rookie of the Year. But with Ricochet and Sarr, it kind of reopened that conversation. You saw some odds drops just based on some chatter on Twitter, but Castle has continued to average 20 points a game over the last 10 to 15 games. He's hit an unbelievable stretch here, and it helps. He's gotten advanced opportunities with multiple players out for the Spurs. Obviously, Wembanyama and Fox. Ware and Edey, 2 solid big men, along with Filipowski for the Utah Jazz, who's actually having a really surprising March for them. Obviously, they're a terrible team, and they continue to tank their ass off and sit players, and they're going to continue to get fined. But Filipowski has been a bright spot for them, as well as Collier. I mean, before he got to USC, everybody expected him to be a top 5 to 10 pick in the draft after he had spent 1 year in college. Disappointed at USC, and has kind of had that resurgence now in the league where you see some of those expectations that he had when he was a high school recruit. So overall, I think this has been a very good stretch here for this rookie class. I think they are overperforming maybe their expectations. Ricochet and Sarr are both averaging around 15 points a game in the month of March, both having impacts on their teams. Ricochet obviously helping Atlanta try to make a playoff push here. Sarr on a very bad Wizards team, but has given them a little hope for the future. And obviously they're wishful to put Cooper Flagg in that front court next to him. But do you have any thoughts? I mean, you've got Edey and Wells. Wells kind of hit a rookie wall here, but has had a very good and overperforming rookie year for a second-round pick. Do you have any thoughts on this rookie class overall?
Yeah,
and where the direction of the league is going with these guys kind of coming in?
Going into the draft last year, everyone was like, this is a down draft. And, I mean, if from a superstar standpoint, that could be true. I don't see necessarily superstars coming out of this draft, but I see a lot of very good to solid role players from this draft, and a couple guys who have star potential in Castle. I think Alex Sarr has definitely shown his ability. Richache has played a lot better recently. I mean, Alex Sarr, he's a big man who can shoot the three, and he can shoot the mid-range. I think he's got a long career ahead of him. A guy who you didn't get to mention, there's just a lot of names here who have been pretty good. Dalton Knecht has been pretty good for the Lakers. I think he could get moved this offseason potentially. The Lakers are going to look to move for a big man, and a lot of teams could use a shooter in Dalton Knecht. A couple other guys, maybe the best rookie who isn't getting talked about because he tore his ACL, Jared McCain. I mean, he very well may end up being the best rookie from this class, as he definitely started out the year better than all of them. And I think had he stayed healthy with the way their injuries went, he probably would be your rookie of the year right now. You got other guys, too, who haven't necessarily got the minutes. So Reed Shepherd went top 3 in the draft. We'll see. He hasn't necessarily got to do a whole lot. The Rockets fit's kind of interesting. He could maybe be moved in the Kevin Durant trade this offseason. We'll see. He's got a lot of potential, though. He's had a couple games, couple moments where you say, hold on a minute, this guy can really shoot the ball. You got Dillingham, Terrence Shannon Jr., both in Minnesota, have both shown some flashes, although haven't gotten consistent minutes. Dalton Knecht as well hasn't really gotten consistent minutes down the stretch here, and we'll see the lineup sort of cut down dramatically for these playoff teams. But Richache, his three-point shot has really improved as of late. You touched on Khalil Ware, Zach Edey. I see Zach Edey for us being a solid player, not necessarily a star, in my opinion, just a solid big man who can get you some rebounds. Hopefully, we'll see his potential. You got Carlton Carrington for the Wizards. I think the Wizards going forward, if they can get Cooper Flagg, even any of these guys, Chris Middleton says they're making the playoffs next year. I'm not sure they'll be that, but I do think they're going to be much improved next year. They've got a lot of talent. Overall, I think this is a very deep draft, much deeper than what people thought about it going into it. And, there's more names that we haven't got to mention. I'm curious to see how the all-rookie team ends up shaping out to be. But, another guy who both of us were fairly high on, who hasn't played a single second all year because of an injury, is Nikola Topic for the Oklahoma City Thunder. We'll see maybe next year if he's going to get any play. But overall, this is a very deep rookie class, and we'll see how it shapes out in the future. But I like this draft a lot.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think the draft is going to overperform, and there's going to be quite a few players from this draft that are going to be quality impact players moving forward in the league. And it starts with the main man, Stephon Castle, who's going to probably win Rookie of the Year. Bub Carrington, who you talked about, I do like the outlook of that Wizards team. They got a ton of talent, and we'll see what they do in the draft. But I hope that you all appreciate a little bit of this episode. We kind of hit on a variety of different topics. I was able to write it into the podcast and convince Josh that we didn't need to talk about Nikola Jokic for every single episode, and I brought him on here. You wouldn't even have to heard his name, but I think it's pretty miraculous that we got through the entire episode without talking about him. So we appreciate y'all listening. There's going to be a few cuts here. We had a few technical issues, so we apologize about that, and we'll hopefully get that corrected for the next episode. And as we mention every episode, please keep leaving review, feedback on the podcast. Check us out, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, and wherever you get your social medias. This has been episode 7 of the State Line Fast Break Podcast.